Good evening, dear friends and students. Today, I will discuss about the decline of the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization. Before the commencement of the class, I would like to present a PowerPoint presentation before you, so you can understand what I am telling to you. So let me share my screen. Just a moment. So the topic of my presentation is causes of the downfall of the Harappan civilization. Now you can see the map of Harappan civilization. Uh, you can see in the map that so many important towns and centers were located in the bank of Arabian Sea, which is presently in the Pakistan. You can see the Arabian Sea and the very good centers such as uh, Mehergarh, Kotdiji, Chanhudro, etc. In this map, you can see the green portion, that is the Harappa, Mehergarh, Navsaro, Mohenjo-daro, Kotdiji, Amri, Surkotada, Lothal, etc. These are the important centers of the Harappan civilization. Now, before start, the major causes of declines are: the number one is internal causes, number two is external causes, and number three is ecological factors. So we are trying to discuss the three factors. Number one is internal causes, number two is external causes, and number three is ecological factors. Now, number one is internal causes. Actually, the city was lack of town planning in the last stage, because we all know that Harappan town planning was very impressive during the time. But narrow lane, unplanned houses, buildings encroached all the roads, and deterioration of culture. Actually, in the late level, architecture are poorly constructed, and deterioration of administration also. Pottery cleans and made within residential area, and conservative character of the uh, people. So these are the internal causes which led to the decline of the Harappan civilization. Now, now the decline of the Indus Valley civilization or Harappan civilizations are the historians are divided in their opinions. Actually, historians still disagree about exactly what led to the decline and end of the Indus Valley civilization. Uh, some are thought that the Aryan invasions were the major cause, and another group of historians thought that climate change was the major cause. Actually, Aryan invasion theory, actually, some historians argue that Indo-European nomads attacked and conquered Indus Valley settlements. Number one. And number two is climate change theory. Actually, others argue that natural disasters changed the course of the Indus River, which prevented cities from getting water and made farmland less fertile. So these are the two theories are very important in discussing the Indus Valley civilization's decline. Now, if we look into the external causes, the external causes are the theory of invasion. So the sign of invasion, wound in back, massacred, bodies scattered without rituals. And Mortimer Wheeler, Mortimer Wheeler was the proponent of that theory, actually the Aryan invasion theory. And the major factors which are very responsible for the decline of the Harappan civilization was ecological factors. Then ecological factors were divided into four subcategories. Number one is earthquake, number two is flooding, number three is change of climate, and number four is deforestation. Now, I am trying to throw light on these four factors. And change of climate. Actually, the climate change is, we all know that the climate change is now a recent phenomenon. But the decline, the main declining force was the change of climate during the Harappan period. The change of the course of the river Indus, actually, the course of river Indus was changed. Number two, sedimentation in the river valley. Number three, gradual drying up of Ghaggar river system, and very shortage of rainfall, increase of salinity level in agricultural land, widespread deforestation, mismanagement of natural resources, and decrease of water resource, lift irrigation, brought drought. So these are the climate change factors which led to the decline of the Indus Valley civilization. Now, if we go through the points in a detailed discussion, now the succession of rise and fall is a law of nature, and after 1500 years of prominence, the Harappan culture gradually declined to the point of extinction. And Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, and other centers of Harappan culture were no exception. And actually, the law of nature was the renowned historian Arnold Joseph Toynbee has categorized the decay of a culture as its final stage after a culture is born and grow to its highest point of efficacy. And the Harappan culture was no exception to this general law of nature, and its decline set in around 1800 BC, and in course of time came its extinction. So the decline was by law of nature. And number one is floods. This is a very important factor. The massive floods in the Indus Valley civilization, Indus Valley, must have been a potent cause for the extinction of the Harappan culture. And the point is proved by the silt clay that covers the collapsed houses at Mohenjo-daro. Respected and repeated floods must have forced the people to flee the inundated places and set up permanent habitat elsewhere. And as a consequence came the decline of Harappa. So floods were the major cause behind the decline. Number three is earthquakes. Actually, geographically, the Harappan culture occupied an area that was prone to earthquakes as it came under a seismographic zone, and repeated seismographic vibrations must have led to erosions that brought down the buildings. And earthquakes continue an important reasons for the decline of the Harappan culture. And number three is change of the course of the river Indus. So as we have mentioned earlier, that some historians attribute the decline of the Harappan culture to the river Indus, changing its course frequently. As such, the Indus Delta shifted away from Mohenjo-daro and water became scarce. And water scarcity must have led to the exodus of the Harappan people to the places. Yet the change of course of the Indus is not reason enough for the decline in Lothal. Actually, we know that Lothal was the big dock in the Arabian area and a big port also. And Kalibangan, Rupar, etc. was also the important centers. So the change of the course of the Indus Valley was the major cause behind the decline of the Harappan civilization. And number 4 point is plague. Actually, we are going to the pandemic situation in the last 3 years, as we all know that. But a important plague epidemic was outbreak in that time. An outbreak of plague epidemic is shown as the reason for the decline of Harappan civilization, and skeletal remains from the main roads of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, as found out through archaeological efforts, tell a sad story. And when an epidemic like plague visits a human habitation, it leaves a trail of death everywhere. And the scattered skeletal remains therefore led some to attribute to its epidemic like plague, though there is no concrete proof of outbreak of plague in the region. Actually, this point, some historians thought that the plague was outbreak during the time as an epidemic, but some of them disagree with that. So this point is not very concrete one. And now the next point is deforestation. Actually, we know that the deforestation was the major cause behind the decline of the Harappan civilization. And number 1, metallurgy. Number 2, jailer made glazed paints. Number 3, baked brick and pottery, and making boat and furniture. So they have cut down the trees for these purposes, and this type of deforestation caused a major environmental problem. Actually, Jonathan Mark Kenoar, the historian, thought that the Harappans were obviously not environmentally conscious like anybody else. They thoughtlessly hacked and used the rich forests, and enormous quantities of woods were needed to make copper and bronze, and it would have devastated the whole area. And the last point to be discussed, that the Harappan civilization was declined due to the Aryan invasion. Actually, I have earlier mentioned that some historians thought that Aryan invasion was a major cause. Actually, Sir Mortimer Wheeler, however, is the opinion that Aryan invasion is the reason for the decline of the Harappan culture. And there is archaeological proof of genocide, and unburied skeletal remains scattered everywhere in Mohenjo-daro. An autopsy of these skeletons reveals damage that must have been caused by sharp objects or weapons. And knowledge and use of irons as weapons was known to the Aryans and not to the Harappan people. And defeat and death of the Harappan people must have come at the hands of the invading Aryans. And the Aryan cavalry must have been an adverse point for the Harappans, who did not know the use of horses. And Professor D.D. Kosambi, the noted historian, holds this view also. Further, the Vedas speak for the forest of the Dasa or Dasu, and the god Indra of the Vedas is also known as Purandara, or destroyer of the forts. And the view of Kosambi is fairly acceptable in the context of the forts of the Harappan culture, and areas of Harappan culture which were not invaded by the Aryans might have perished due to barbaric conflicts with rural and forest people. And anyway, foreign invasion goes a long way to account for the decline of the Harappan culture. And the multiple causes enumerated above were responsible for the decline of the Harappan culture. And thanks to archaeological efforts, we know a lot about this oldest urban culture of India. Indeed, their town planning, urban and religious life, the Lothal port, the unique art and architecture artifacts and pottery have led everybody to look upon them with awe and administration. So, foreign invasion or the Aryan invasion was the major cause behind the decline. Now, what are the results? So, these are the points which I have discussed. Now, the results are drying up or drought. Actually, the environmental cause, environmental ecological factors brought a huge drought and drying up the whole civilization and approaching of desert. The the whole civilization was covered with so much forest, but the huge devastating deforestation caused a desert and lack of proper management of soil, and the soil salinity has increased and decrease of fertile land uh, resulted the loss of irrigation and loss of agriculture and disruption of agriculture and low production, and the people have migrated from Harappan sites to another sites. Now, in conclusion, that uh, we may conclude that in the note that the natural calamities like drought, flood, etc., resulted the decline, soil acidity due to overuse and deforestation, making the land barren, and tectonic movements caused due to unplanned dam constructions. These are the points which are discussed by some of the historians, and some of the historians thought that many scholars believe that the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization was caused by climate change. Some experts believe that the drying of the Saraswati River, which began around the 1900 BCE, was the main cause for the climate change, while others a, conclude that the Aryan invasion was the major cause. So we have ended the slide, and now uh, we may conclude in this way. So, students, today I am discussing about, I have already discussed the major causes behind the decline of the Harappan civilization. Now, you consult the books, and I have given to you a few questionnaires. So, please solve the questionnaires and send it back to me as early as possible. Thank you.